love banging the giant gavel, especially when it's feature time. And of course, it is time for our first magnificent feature. And I'm going to do the thing of reading the bio. Yes. Sometimes I read it, sometimes I don't. And with you, Hals, if I don't read your bio, I'm going to be talking about you wearing my poncho and those stripy pants and looking so colourful and like a walking circus. So I figured, well, I've said it now, haven't I? Circus. But I shall read his bio as well. This is the bio for Hal, Walking Circus. Hal Simons was born at a very young age. From here, to be honest, things have been a bit of a mixed bag. Yes, it's a walking circus after all. Hal's ability to share his journey through painful times is a strength. He puts his emotions and observations into words for us all to share the journey, and that is not only powerful, but remarkable. He writes on death and grief and love. He is often found in one of Melbourne's inner northern suburbs and is usually fueled by strong coffee, as well as fooled by it because he has more than one, and chronic pain. But he is colourful. He is a walking circus. He is wonderful. He is delightful. Here is Hal Simons and his delightful retrospective. Yay!
Thank you, Lish. I'm going to sit down because pain is being a bastard at the moment, so...
Yes.
And there's only so much that coding can do. So yes, I write on grief and love and chronic pain and a few other things, and I'm not doing any of those poems today because I'm doing other people's. I was going to do one to start off by a lovely friend of mine who was going to be here. Is Mary floating around? Then that poem goes down a ways. All right. Yeah, let's do this one. Let's not start off with too much of a griefy one. A lovely friend of mine named Peter Hayden wrote this poem last year, and he's a singer-songwriter, and he doesn't do poems. He doesn't perform poems. Before this one, as far as I know, he doesn't write poems. But he has graciously allowed me to read it. It's called Keeps Coming. So you're born and you grow and you ask yourself, why are my grand folks so slow? Why do they fumble and grope for the right control and the right word? Why do they know so little of what's going on in the world? How can I make them understand I'll never be that old? And you rip through your teens with all the right memes and pronouns and scenes while your parents struggle to glean the meaning of change that just keeps coming. Like huge waves that you surf gleefully, freely, and think, this may be hard, but this is so easy. It's obvious, clear. Why do they struggle? The truth is obvious, and your parents say things like, 10 years ago. And you think, so what? So what about 10 years ago, or 20, or 30? Why hearken back to the dark? Go towards the light. Now we are finally getting it right. And they screwed it up, and they got it wrong, and we have to live in the world they fucked up. And then you remember that as of last Tuesday, you can't say fucked up, because sex isn't dysfunction. Okay, that's fine. At least we are clear. This is good. This is why we are here, to fix all the crap. And then you remember that as of last Wednesday, you can't say crap, because it changed the natural bodily function. And a tiny cold wind just teasingly plays with your ear. And then before you can draw breath, you're 30. It feels like being grown up, a bit more and less of a marker of imminent death than you feared. But something is wrong with music. It doesn't quite make sense. The new stuff is lacking. Some crucial things that have dripped with only a decade ago. Maybe AI, maybe the muses have run dry. And a breeze is chilling the back of your neck. And the new shibboleths snatch the words from your breath, and you see a myriad tiny types of death. That favourite cafe has now gone away, and coffee. Do you remember coffee? That rare and precious bean, now rarely seen. No one you know can afford it except as a birthday treat. But when you were young, it was common and cheap. We had the best baristas in the world. What's a barista? Seriously? And you turn your collar to the chilling wind that rifles all through your thinning hair. In your 50s, your kid is incomprehensible, snitching you out to the carbon police, saying stuff like, You say boomers were bad? You did nothing, millennial slackers. No plan to save the world from burning if we hadn't come along to fix it in turn. You say you were brave to even have me. Go back to your secret hoard of Ethiopian Yigashefe. I know where it is, I'm not a complete Morrison, and just fucking leave us to roast. And don't tell me not to say fuck. You did, and it got me. Born a net zero, and you're shit out of luck. And you brace yourself in the freezing gale and wonder what happened to home. At last, as you fumble and grope for any control in some right word, you realise that if you have taken the time to get wise, you recognise that time passes and you're now obsolete. And everything dies. And some bits were bitter and some bits were sweet, but they're memories now, if you're lucky. And if not, your world has already dissolved in colliding confusions, eroding the past like waves, laying waste to all the world's beaches. Maybe some snatches of warmth and sand and water, and even some music from when you were 20, a passing break in the clouds, a momentary order, the smile of Apollo. But the tide is relentless and just keeps coming, and things turn hollow. Now the wind blows cold like what's left of the poles. You can barely stand, so you crawl through the door marked 7th age. And the wind blows you down a deepening slope that you cannot resist. Takes you down to the cliff edge and into the mist, from whence nobody returns. All that remains is unoccupied flesh, to be burnt by some kind soul that you have bereft, and everything to darkness turns. At this point, it may be a comfort to know it's really not all about you. From this warming fact, let comfort flow, and know that I've chosen the darkest of lines and turned my words from laughter and light and stupid old jokes and comfortable rugs and moments of happiness crushed between hugs and golden connections that only glow for a moment, but for that moment, how brightly they glow.
Aww.
All right. Can you tell I'm excited? Okay, so this next poem is the first poem I ever read out loud. It was sent to me about a dozen years ago, shortly after the death of my father, and I read it at his eulogy, and I broke down halfway through. And then it was a handful of years later, and I came across to one of these. There's quite a few in Melbourne. I think they're called poetry gigs. And I wandered in there, and it was to the ends of the verse up in Northcote, an open studio, and they were like, "Oh, put your name down on open mic." And the downside of having a name that only has 3 letters is by the time you've finished, your brain's caught up with what the fuck you're doing. And I was like, a lot of panic in a very short space of time. And so I had finished reading a short story that day, so I read that one, and I went, "Oh, have I read any poems?" And I went, "Well, there is that one I read at Dad's funeral. That's a good one to be my first foray onto the open mic stage." So you say I write about grief. Yeah, I started off strong. And there's a couple of translations of this one. It is Sonnet 94 by Pablo Neruda, and this is the version I got sent. And it still hits there a dozen years later. If I die, survive me with such sheer force that you waken the furies of the pallid and the cold. From south to south, lift your indelible eyes. From sun to sun, dream through your singing mouth. I don't want your laughter or your steps to waver. I don't want my heritage of joy to die. Don't call up my person, I am absent. Live in my absence as if in a house. Absence is a house so vast that inside you will pass through its walls and hang pictures on the air. Absence is a house so transparent that I, lifeless, will see you living. And if you suffer, my love, I will die again. My father never knew this side of me. Didn't see many sides of me because I've only discovered them in the last dozen years. But I think he would have, he'd like where I am today. Well, whether or not he does, he's in a grave in Geelong, so it doesn't really matter. Adding humour to grief, I don't know what you're talking about. Coping mechanism? So this one is called Last Orders, and it's a poem written by an English comedian called Johnny Vegas, who is fucking wonderful. And it resonates with me. So last orders. Ask not for whom that bell doth toll, as wordy barmaid's eyes do roll. A landlord with an earnest shout calls time on drinks and ushers out. The dutiful sip up and leave, but he's a last card up his sleeve. With feet like landlocked deep-sea diver, shuffles barwards with a fiver. He begs at last for just one more, and one yourself, just make it right. He promises to drink it quick, yet deep down knows he's feeling sick. Not from stout or bags of scratchings, more from questions booze keeps asking. What happened to the happy me? I think, hang on, need to pee. In the bog the poet sways, poised to ponder fonder days, before the time of cheek-warm cider, eyes of wonder opening wider. Now they narrow, tired of fun, as fart turns wet and burns the bum. Yet rare a smile pops in his head, till urine runs down inside leg. And thus the landlord shows him out, the child inside is crying out. I was not meant for such sweet sorrow, but opts instead for see you tomorrow. Thou stout-soaked, sig-stained, feckless soul is what for, not who, that bell did toll. So when Lish asked me to perform, I was like, oh, feature, I can do this. And they're like, actually, it's the retrospective, you do other people's. And I was like, fuck yeah, you mean I don't have to choose which poems I'm doing, whether or not they're good for the audience, and yada, yada, yada. So, it's like, I get to do other people's stuff. And this one is written by a friend of mine who is not here, but they'll get the recording of it nonetheless. Mary Williamson, who is an amazing poet in Melbourne town. And they wrote this one last month. And when I heard it, I was like, I want that poem. And thankfully, they let me have it. It seems most of the ones I'm doing tonight have some form of transition, whether it's seasonal or age, or... It's nice when you choose poems and then realize there's a theme to them. It's called Circle of Friends. Winter and spring arranged to meet for coffee. They sat by the river under the blue, blue sky, watching ducks paddling back and forth. We should do this more often, said Winter. I'm sorry I've been so self-absorbed. Spring smiled, her warm smile lifting green eyes to her friend's face. It's okay. We're here. I'm glad to see you. She moved closer and sat in companionable silence while a melody played in her head. Spring and summer went away for the weekend camping in the desert. Spring loved the crisp, fresh mornings, watching the stars fade in dawn's first light. Summer watched her sleep in the lazy afternoon stupor. They toasted marshmallows together and talked into the night. I wish we could do this more often, said Spring. Summer cuddled closer and squeezed her gently. We're here now, she said, feeling the fire flush her cheeks. I'm glad to see you. Summer and autumn went for a picnic. Summer sighed and as she sank heavily onto the blanket. It's so good that we could do this, said Summer. Thanks for calling me. It's been a while, said Autumn, remembering that she had picked fresh raspberries and peaches to share with her friend. I love that we do this every year. It wouldn't be the same without you. Autumn passed the linen napkins embroidered with banksia blossom and a container of homemade zucchini slice. They both lay back and munched in the shade of a tree, looking out over the shimmering blues and greens towards distant tiny boats as a scattering of beads on the horizon. Summer was glad to rest. Autumn meant to contact Winter, and usually she would have by now. She got caught up in training sessions until she bumped into them running in the national park. Suddenly, she realized with a flood of memories how much she appreciated Winter's directness and clarity. They walked the winding path together. Nothing was needed to close the gap between them. They fell into step naturally. Winter passed their friend a jacket as the wind picked up. I forgot you hiked here. I missed you. Time fell away as they trod the muddy loam together, slowing to clamber over tree trunks not yet cleared by friends of the trail. Back at the car park, they lingered until rain threatened, parting reluctantly. Winter was at the local farmer's market, carrying a full basket of potatoes, Swedes, and a whole cabbage, when their back pocket started vibrating. They checked their phone once they'd found a place to set their burden down. Sure enough, they'd missed a call, but Spring had left a voice message. I had a beautiful friend of mine, delightful, flawed crystal of a human who unfortunately passed away a few years ago. And his name was John Thompson. And I love him so much. I've written quite a lot about him. And he can't stop me. There's a lot of him and me in some ways. I remember he lived in Brisbane, and I remember getting a phone call saying, "I'm at the cafe next door to your house, come on down," which was how he rolled. And he was very excited about this story he'd heard about in the 1940s. They needed beavers to get to a new home, and he was humming this tune and singing, and I just watched enraptured. And he wrote this, and it has a very sing-alongable chorus, which you can sing along to, or not. And it's called "What Shall We Do with a Homeless Beaver?" Think Drunken Sailor and you'll get the tune pretty well. In 48 in Idaho, 4 houses the animals had to go. They turned for help to a man named Elmo, fish and game employee. What shall we do with a homeless beaver? What shall we do with a homeless beaver? What shall we do with a homeless beaver? Throw him from an airplane. Beavers, they move way too slow. From Piat Lake they had to go. Their leader was called Geronimo. He was fine and brave and furry. Elmo Heater was the man. Elmo had a cunning plan. "I will do what no one else can, transplant all the beavers." The beavers their demise were facing. They had to get to Chamberlain Basin. Against the clock Elmo was racing. "We must save the beavers." He thought of parachutes, we don't know why, to take the beavers through the sky. A dumb idea, but worth a try. A load of airborne beavers. Elmo put them into boxes with automatic lockses that opened when they hit the roxes. Freedom for the beavers. The beavers live there to this day. They tell their tales, they have their say. It is to Elmo that they pray, the sky god of the beavers. What shall we do with a homeless beaver? What shall we do with a homeless beaver? What shall we do with a homeless beaver? Throw him from an airplane.